exciting. Okay, so I'm going to tell you what they are, but we're really only going to talk about 2 of them tonight because, again, there's no way. And even those 2, we're going to talk about loss and we're going to talk about grief. I do a loss and grief training in Tulare County. It's 3 hours, so we should be out of here by 10 o'clock. No, I'm just kidding. So I'm going to do my very best. This is going to be really quick, really fast. I talk really fast. But there's no other way to do it. But I will tell you what all 7 are, but honestly we'd be here till tomorrow if we talked about all of them. And Jason said I can't be here till tomorrow, so. Okay, so these are the 7 core issues of adoption. And the thing that is unique about the 7 core issues of adoption is that the 7 core issues of adoption are for the entire adoption constellation. And what do I mean when I say the adoption constellation? I'm talking about birth parents or first parents, I'm talking about the child who was adopted, and I'm talking about the adoptive parents as well. These 7 issues apply to all of us in one way or another. And loss is at the center because loss is at the center. No adoption happens without loss being at the center of that. So we'll talk about a little bit of what that means a little bit later. I'm just going to go over these really quick. Rejection. We're going to be focusing on the kids tonight. That's what I'm going to be talking about. I'm going to be talking about how they apply to the kids. But rejection also comes out of that loss. Our kids tend to feel rejected very easily. And I don't know if anybody has this kid, but as soon as they start to feel that rejection, what happens? Anybody have the push-pull kid? Push you away, pull you back, push you away, pull you back. She's all, ah, sister, yeah. Yeah, because that's a lot of times that's about rejection. So as soon as they perceive the slightest rejection, attachment is scary, being close to you is scary, it hurts, I'm going to push you right back. So rejection is a big one. Shame and guilt is a big one. Shame, kids are very egocentric. So the reason for adoption, the reason for placement, they're going to internalize all of that, and they're going to create their own internal story that has to do with, well, it was my fault, if I only would have been better, if there were, all kinds of stuff like that. But our kids, a lot of our kids have an internal working model that is very shame-oriented. Grief, we're going to talk about that. Identity, super fun. I think I see that identity coming out a lot in our teen years. I know in Fresno County, Jade and Priscilla work with a lot of teens. In Tulare County, we do a lot with our teenage because this is the time when identity is, how do I form an identity? Who am I? When I come from these 2 different places and I have this other family tree that I don't really know about, and it doesn't really make sense. The same with intimacy. We talk, what I was saying earlier about that push-pull. They start to believe that being close to someone isn't safe. So a lot of times developing that relationship with our kids can be really difficult because they are pushing us away and they do get scared. And if we're not giving them the skills to be in that relationship, then what happens when they grow up and they're, hope we want our kids to be in a relationship right when they're older. And then mastery and control is like your final stage in life when you're ready to go. And our kids have a lot of control issues. Anybody in a she's like, oh, yeah. Anybody in getting some control battles with their kids? Because there's a lot of things that were out of control, right? They have no control over that they left their first family. They have no control over the fact that they were adopted into this family. All of the big decisions in their life that have been made outside of their control. So that is a really big challenge for them. So those are the 7 core issues. See how fast I did that? But they do apply, like I said, to everybody that is in the constellation, that is birth parents too, and us as adoptive parents. But I did give you handouts, so if you're like, oh, I want to read about this later, there's some handouts on your table and it will explain it to you a little bit more. All right, so I want to start by talking about loss. Oh, and before I forget to tell you, the 7 core issues, there's never been a book about the 7 core issues until now. There's been, articles and things like that. but Allison Davis Maxon and Sharon Rosa just wrote this book. It is phenomenal. It is so good. And it's so, the other day Jade looked at it and she was like, wow, it's so detailed, it almost overwhelms you. But the information in there is incredible. And Allison Maxon is just an incredible human being, and she writes that book with the passion that she has serving our kids. So I highly recommend that book if you guys ever want to learn a little bit more. And it goes really specifically into the issues for everybody involved in the adoption, and it's really fabulous. And I make no money by telling you about this fabulous, but it's called The 7 Core Issues. The 7 Core Issues in, you can't read it from over there? No, I'm just kidding. The 7 Core Issues in Adoption and Permanency. Really, and in the back it even has specific things like if your child is a certain ethnicity or different things that would make the 7 core issues a little bit different for that child. Does that make sense? Really good, very thorough. Okay, he'll post the book on the page, whatever page that is, I don't know. But it's going to be somewhere. Okay, so I kind of already said this. No adoption happens without loss. Loss is at the core of how our family came together, and it is intergenerational, and it completely changes the trajectory of our child's life. Sorry, I really have to take some water right now. Oh. There. I was just pausing for effect. That's what I was doing. So, has anybody ever heard of ambiguous loss? And someone, is there a clock that I can see from here? Because otherwise I'm just, oh, there you go, right there. It's going to flash at me. Okay, we're good. Has anybody ever heard the term ambiguous loss before? Okay. I love you guys. This is so great. Okay, so ambiguous loss was actually first studied by this lady called Pauline Bosch. She wrote a book about it. And what she was studying was the effect on families who had veterans that went off, or soldiers that went off to the Vietnam War and then were missing in action. So they weren't dead. There was no, like, okay, they're dead, you know, their life is over. You know, you can grieve it now. It was, well, we don't really know where they are or if they're ever coming back, but you go ahead and go on with your life. It's going to be great. So they created this ambiguity around this loss because the families didn't know what to do with it. They didn't know if their loved one was ever coming back. So it's there's two different ways it could be, but the way that it was studied then is that somebody is not physically present, but they're psychologically present. Like, we know about them, and we think about them, and we wonder if they're coming back, but we don't know what's happening. And there's no, like, you don't go to the Hallmark store and buy a card for ambiguous loss, right? There's no set, here's the grieving process for ambiguous loss. It really doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense, and for our kids, it doesn't really make sense a lot of the time. So they say you can be, it's like frozen grief, right? It really complicates it because they don't know how to grieve it. And they end up with what we call ghost relationships because the person isn't really there, but somehow they are trying to figure out how to have a relationship with that person. So they call it the impact of the psychological presence. So it's like somebody, like I just said, psychologically they're there, physically they're not there. So I'll tell you a story. This is my best example of, and I asked my daughter, can I share the story? I share it all the time. So she's 18 now, and when she was in 5th grade, I used to sit in the back of her, well, I used to help on Fridays. So on Friday, every Friday afternoon, I was in the back of her class, grading papers or doing whatever fabulous thing her teacher was having me do. And the teacher was reading a book about loss. I don't remember what it was. And she went around the room and she was having the kids kind of say things that maybe were important to them because they're reading this book about, I think, like something had happened to somebody's dog. And so kids are raising their hand, things that are important to them. They're like, my dog, my parents, my family. And my daughter raises her hand. She's the cutest thing ever. She still is, I'm not going to lie. And she has the biggest smile on her face. And so I'm sitting in the back of the room, I'm like, me. She goes to me, yep. Sitting in the back of the room, she's going to be like, hi, Mommy. So I'm sitting back there, and the teacher calls on her, and she goes, my birth mom. And I go, oh, okay. That was not what I was expecting her to say. But I thought two things in that moment. The first thing I thought, honestly, I swear, was, wow, she knew that it was okay to say that in front of me. She knew that she had permission to say that, and that was okay. And I thought that was fabulous. And the next thing I said to myself was, it's not really all about you all the time, is it? Apparently it's not. But so it really told me something, though, about her, because even though we might not have conversations about Regina, as her birth mom's day, who we do see on at least once a year, sometimes more, she's thinking about her all the time. Like, it's always in her mind. We're sitting in a classroom, they're talking about loss, and that's the first person that comes to her mind. And I thought that was so significant. And the unfortunate thing is that the teacher had no idea what to do with that. She was like, oh, well, I'm sure you love your parent. And I was like, oh, girl. So my daughter and I had a conversation about later, like, it's okay. People don't know what to do with that. It's different. Everybody doesn't live this life. It's cool. Don't worry about it. But it was really a moment for us, for me to realize that sometimes I just really forgot. Sometimes you forget how important that is to them. So much more fun than I am. Daddy, he said, Daddy. I love this. This was actually in the 7 Core Issues book. This is just something that an adult wrote in there, an adult adoptee. I remember feeling angry all the time when I was a teenager. Jade, do we not see this with our teenagers? I had all of these questions in my mind about what happened, why it happened, where they were now, and did they think about me? But I didn't have anyone that I could talk to. It was clear that talking about adoption or my birth family was upsetting to my parents. I felt like it was my right to know it happened to me. Looking back, I think my adoption losses hit me the hardest when I was a teenager. I can tell you I have seen this over and over and over again. I know now that I was feeling the loss and pain pretty deeply, but for some strange reason I felt guilty, like this was a long time ago. Why am I feeling this way now? And I think what we see with a lot of our teenagers is that other 7 Core issue of identity, when they're really trying to figure out who they are, their loss really impacts them as a teenager. And we see this with our kids too as they go through different developmental phases, that they kind of grieve their losses every time, because it means something a little bit different to them as they start to get older. So I really see this as being kind of a tough spot for some of our teenagers. So there's what we call vicarious loss, and you guys will know this, because what this is your kiddo moves into your house and they got their backpack on, and their backpack is all their trauma and their loss. And they move into your family, and what do? Yeah, they start unpacking their loss into your house, right? And pretty soon you're looking around your house and you're like, what the heck just happened here, right? Yeah, because they bring all that stuff and they start unpacking it into your family. That's what we call vicarious loss. The other thing that we call is like a secondary loss. And the secondary loss are those losses that kind of spring from the original loss. And it could be like your kids at school and suddenly somebody says, oh, you're black and your parents are white, right? And then the kid goes, you know, well, it's almost like it catches you unaware. You never know when it's coming, and that's what makes secondary loss so hard to deal with. And you think, well, that question is so innocuous in itself. Why does it hurt so much? Why does it bother me so much? Like we call it paper cuts to the soul. Because you think it's just a little thing. Why does it hurt me so much? Because that's what it's called a secondary loss, and they hit you when you're not ready for them. You don't know that they're coming. So, I mean, the more that we work with our kids on talking about those losses and talking about those questions that come up, because they do come up, right? Then the more that they can start to be prepared. What do I say when someone says that? When they're a little more prepared that it's coming, or like when my daughter, when the teacher decided that she had to say, oh, I'm sure you really love your mom too. that was something that she was really surprised by that. Like, well, duh, why would you even say that, you know? But it's something that we really talked about later. We really went through kind of unpacking that a little bit. These are just, you guys can read, I think this is on your list, so you guys can read these later. But these are just a lot of the different things that our kids lose by being raised in a foster or a kinship family. Oops, I didn't mean to. Let's see. I think there was something I wanted to point out there, but now I don't remember what it was. I love the gap. Has anybody ever heard this? I have a lot of teenagers that refer to it as the gaps, and that's just the incomplete narrative of their story. And they'll always say, well, every adopted kid knows what the gap is. Like, we all have gaps in our story. That's what they refer to it as. All right. Sorry. I love this little poem. It says, I choose grief, that river that takes you somewhere. Like when Charlie said, it must be hard not to know the person you were born to. And off I swept, both hating him and loving him for saying it. Thrashing upstream in anger to come swirling down in sadness, and bumped against the bank to climb out on new legs. Where would I still be but for that river and those new legs? I have a little, I'm just going to read it to you. This is from the person that wrote that poem. She says, she was asked to write a poem about one of the 7 core issues. So she said, I chose grief because I had a story I needed to tell about it. 25 years earlier, my friend Charlie had said something that spun me around like a leaf in a stream. His response to hearing I had been adopted was to say, it must be hard not to know the person you were born to. Such mixed feelings about his having said that. Why hating Charlie? Because if what he said were true, it was scary. I didn't know if I could bear never knowing my birth mother, nor did I want to go through life with the disadvantage, the blindness of not knowing her. Then why loving Charlie? Because as hard as it was to hear what he said, it felt true. I was grateful that someone in this world wasn't afraid to say it. It is hard not to know the person you were born to. My joy, my gratitude, my relief, and having this acknowledged was probably what let me give in to the grief. Grief is so paradoxical. We have to let it sweep us off our feet, thrashing upstream in anger, to come down, swirling down in sadness. If we are to end up more oriented in our lives, walking on our own 2 legs, losing control to gain control. The river metaphor just popped into my head and helped me make sense of this paradox. Here is another paradox. New Legs was written by request. I got a long-distance call and agreed to try to send something by a certain date. In the end, though, I didn't think any poem of mine has ever come from a deeper place. I'm so glad I got to go there. And what I love about that poem and what we say to our families all the time is that grief is where the work happens. Grief is where the healing begins with our kids. And it's really hard as a parent to sit with your child in their grief. I know that, but honestly, it really is. This is where we can start to do the work. The grief is where we get to start to do the work. All right, so what happens when grief and trauma collide? Super fun, right? Anybody have examples of what happens when grief and trauma collide? Yeah?
We have 4 that are adopted there, and as they were all starting to get to me,
I love them. Those are actually my favorite. Oh. Mm-hmm. Just when they were figuring it out. Oh. Yeah. Could you guys hear that? I probably should have put the microphone up to her. I'm sorry. I'm slow. I figured that out after she was almost done. So what she said is that her kids, when they were in their preteen, teenage years, they had a relationship with their birth mother. They were just really starting to ask these questions. when she passed away. So now they've lost her twice, right? And so I imagine there was a lot of work to be done in that grief. Yeah, still being done. So when grief and trauma collide, grief releases a hormone in your child's body that's a stress hormone. What's the main stress hormone in our body? Huh? Cortisol? Did I hear someone say cortisol? We'll just pretend. Huh? Cortisol. Trauma releases a stress hormone in your body. Guess what one that is? Cortisol. Yeah. So our kids have outrageous amounts of cortisol floating around in their body because these two things are colliding and they both increase stress hormones. So they're on high alert and they're highly reactive, very reactive. Their window of tolerance, not very big. Not a very big window of tolerance. Okay, do I have sound? But I'm not sure how to play it from, okay. You probably have to push play up there. Wait, before you start it, has anybody in here seen Instant Family? Okay, all right, okay. This is just a clip from Instant Family. Hopefully. Okay. Let's see what happens when. It would be really unfortunate that this is. Yeah. Are you gonna open in the browser or no? You want me to act it out? Jade, if you sit down, I'll brush your hair. Jade doesn't get paid enough for that. Yeah, she's like, you can brush my hair. Do you know the scene? She's ready to go. She's gonna act it. She's gonna act it out. That's so weird because oh, you know why? When you first went into the PowerPoint, you probably didn't enable it. Can I tell you what's, oh, okay. Okay, that's fine. Just play it from there. They're not picky, right? You guys aren't picky.
Hey, what's wrong?
I have no idea. I just woke up this morning and damn it.
Oh, you know what? I think I can help. I have this really great detangler. You want me to?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, whatever, yeah.
Okay, here. Let's see. Yeah.
Okay.
Wow, how'd this happen?
I don't know.
Yeah. Just let me know if it pulls, okay? Okay, that's good. Better, yeah?
Oh, wow. Yeah, thank you.
Let me just smooth that out for you.
Thank you.
No problem. It's all gone.
Okay. Oh, she's gonna go back to it. Okay. So tell me, okay, the first time I saw that scene, I cried like a baby, I'm not gonna lie. I cried a lot in that movie. I laughed a lot too, but I cried a lot. Okay, so what was happening? What did you guys see? Okay. said she was difficult at the beginning, but she's realizing the mom's going to be there for her. Okay? Yes? She's like, no, do not give me that microphone. Anybody else? What else did you guys see? What was that about? Go ahead. Yeah, you saw the movie. Yeah. Yeah, she was. She was remembering that her mom used to brush her hair. That was what she was remembering. So what's happening with her in that moment? She's grieving. Yeah, she's grieving the loss of her mom. Okay? Is that what you were going to say? Do you have something else? Okay. So I think, oh, did he leave us? I think maybe, oh, look at that. Big screen and everything.
She just comes out here, she takes all this stuff out, and she can't bother with the 1 second it takes to close a stupid door or put anything in the sink.
What happened?
I found my hairbrush in the toilet this morning.
What?
I told you that wasn't me.
Of course it was you. I left it in the bathroom for you. And Juan and Lita aren't even up yet.
I'm up now, Miss Noisy Pants.
Sorry, sweetie. I thought we were really connecting, babe. I left it there for her with a nice little note with hearts on it and stuff.
Oh my God.
Didn't do it.
Wow. Hello.
What is that?
You're wearing that? Are you going to a strip club?
Sorry, I'm not just like an uptight douche like you.
Hey!
No, you don't talk to my
This
wife
is your
like
man,
that.
Taylor. Lost.
You know what? Go put some clothes on. A lot of them. Now get in my truck. I'm driving you this morning.
Oh my God. You guys are so annoying.
Change the clothes.
It's not that big of a deal.
Hey,
Do I dress like a douche?
no. Make sure she gets out to my truck.
Bye, Daddy.
Bye, sweetie.
Oh my goodness. Oh.
What was that? Oh. Ow.
You okay? Oh, it's a shame.
Okay. What happened in that scene? What was happening there? Why'd you do that? Yeah.
Feeling vulnerable.
Feeling vulnerable. Okay. So she's feeling vulnerable. She has a loss that she's now grieving. How did she express that loss? Huh? Rejection. Yeah. What else? Anger. Ding, ding, there's your winner. That is the biggest, especially in the teenage years, that is probably the biggest way that we see our kids express their anger, or express their grief. Why anger? Why do you go to anger? Makes you look tougher. Control. oh yeah, I'm sorry, forgot. But you guys could hear me, huh? I told you I don't need this. But that's the thing that's so tough with in foster care and adoption is just, again, it's not a loss that's recognized. It's not a loss that people understand. So our kids are often dealing with people's perceptions and on top of their own grief. Okay, so let's talk about grief because I said this is where the work happens. So here's some symptoms of childhood grief that some things that you guys might see. Apparent lack of feeling about what happened or relief. Physiological changes, and that we see a lot of stomach aches, headaches, constant kind of medical issues, regressed behaviors. Trauma does that too with regressed behaviors. See a lot of that. Suddenly losing their ability to feed themselves, or especially when you see kids move from home to home, those are the kind of things that you'll see, some regressed stuff. Disorganization, panic and fear. Disorganization, does anybody have the kid that does the homework but never turns it in? Yeah, I love that. So great. Explosive emotions and acting out behaviors, that's the anger that I was talking about, and a lot of times that's where it will go. Guilt and self-blame. Again, our kids are always they're very egocentric, so everything's gonna be their fault and everything's gonna go back onto them. And if they don't know their story, they're gonna make up their story, and it's gonna be very egocentric and probably unkind to themselves. Increase in isolation, withdrawal, avoidant. There might be a change in functioning, active, withdrawn, from happy to hostile. And again, like I said, just be aware that kids are kind of re-evaluating their losses with every developmental phase. So you might go, oh man, we made it through that, it's all really good. And then they, hit 12 and you're going through it again. You're thinking, oh, I really thought. Just a really easy example of that is, my daughter went to the doctor the other day and had a physical, and it was the first time that she went without me because she's grown now. And she came home and she was angry. And so she's telling me this whole thing about they were asking her all these questions and she couldn't answer them. And it was the first time that she realized that there was questions she didn't own her own story. She didn't know what to tell them about her genetic heritage, Who thinks that's going to happen when you go to the doctor? Like, she wasn't expecting it to happen in that moment of time. And these are just some triggers. Probably most of you know. Like I said, the unfortunate thing is that we never know when it's coming. I wasn't prepared for the fact that it was going to come from a doctor's visit. But also really big life experiences like graduating from high school, a time when it should be this really exciting, I'm moving on kind of thing. Is a huge trigger. Getting married, having children, all those things where we think, oh, they're an adult, so we're gonna, we're on with that. We're not. These things keep hitting us. Bless you. And the good news is that our kids heal and grow within loving and permanent relationships. The family is the primary intervention. You know that. And I'm sure you guys have heard this a million times. Are you guys hot or is it just me? Oh no, just me. Okay. These lights. So the attachment really is the gateway to meeting our child's needs, making them feel safe, and really working on that loss and grief. And it happens 1,000 times a day with a baby. Doesn't maybe happen that much when our kids are older. But just really, they have a need. They express it through oftentimes behavior. And because they don't say, oh, I feel hungry, or oh, I feel angry, or oh, I feel frustrated. Instead, they act it out. So the more times that we can meet their needs, the more time that we can see what's behind that behavior and help them, give the intervention and help them relax, we're building attachment over and over and over again. And those are the spaces where they really start to heal their grief and loss and become attached to us as their caregiver, which is obviously really important. Okay, so I want to talk about a couple of things. How to increase your child's emotional intelligence. That's like a really big word. I like to say how to deal with big feelings. That's my my knock it down word. And the first thing, and this is the one that I really hate as a parent, and you're all gonna roll your eyes at me, but I'm gonna say it anyways. It's our effect that the child mirrors. They mirror what we're doing. We are always modeling our emotional intelligence, and so they're learning for us. So, what happens when, okay, so in the scene where she just threw the brush in the toilet, what was the mom, I'm totally picking on this, movie mom right now. What was her effect at that moment? Yeah, she was slamming stuff, right? We get that. I've never done that, but I heard that some of you guys do. That's what Pastor Jason said. Right? So how do kids, when kids are up here and then we go up here, what happens? They win. They win because now what? It's in a battle of control and everybody's just escalating and escalating and escalating. Yeah. Okay, I have been there. I do know what that looks like. And it doesn't work. And you keep trying and you're like, oh. So I believe this I totally believe this, that one of the best things that we can do as a parent is regulate how we react to our child. I'm sorry, it's probably one of the most important things that we will ever do. And it's probably the hardest thing that we'll ever do. For me, at least. I don't know. You guys might be better than me, but for me, the hardest thing I ever had to do was watch how I reacted. So they're learning from us. The way that we react when we go through stress is how they start to learn how to react. When our kids are babies, okay, so when our kids are an infant and it's like this, oh, who had those days and who remembers them fondly? Yeah, they're really tiring, but that's how our kids learn to regulate themselves. They learn to regulate themselves because what? We did it. We did it. We taught them. We went in. We cooed at them. We said, oh, sweetie, oh, you need a new diaper. Okay, I'm going to change that diaper for you, right? We talked to them. We told them what we were doing. And by doing that, we set the tone for their eventual emotional intelligence, right? We taught them how to regulate. We have to do the same things with our kids that don't have the skills to regulate now. We've got to co-regulate with them and give them the skills to do that. Assist your child with self-awareness, helping them learn what their triggers are. When a kid knows what their triggers are, they can learn how to manage them a little bit better. We've had lots of conversations about triggers and what to do when they come and how we react to them. Assist them in noticing signals in their body and practice regulation. I love having a Nerf war, right? Nerf wars are fun. Okay, and then what can you do after you have the Nerf war? Now you can actually feel your heart rate. Oh, what does your heart feel like right now? What does your body feel like right now? And now how can we kind of get our heart rate back down? Like we have to teach them how to emotionally regulate themselves. Yeah, and practice it with them. And teach them how to short circuit the hijack. So I always say post and practice a calming engagement plan. And a calming engagement plan is really just 3 things to do when the wheels fall off the bus. Like what works for you when you're in that spot? Is it like a tent? Do you need to be in a tent that has very little sensory stimulation? Is it music in your headphones? Is it a weighted blanket? What is it that makes you feel safe and secure in that moment that you can actually start to regulate yourself when they're beyond that regulation? But we need to be practicing it with them when they're calm. Create intimate dialogue with our children. Like, it's okay to talk about your feelings, right? It's okay to talk about it and to express what they're feeling. A lot of our kids, I think it was on the other slide, and I meant to say it, but it said about talking about how they feel. A lot of our kids are really not in touch with their bodies, right? And they can't tell you their emotion because they can't name it because they're not sure. So, and again, that's something that we learned through our attachment relationship. Our mom or our dad told us that our stomach hurt because we were hungry or whatever the case might have been. So we really have to teach our kids to be aware of their bodies and their feelings because they're not. They're very disconnected. Assisting your child in understanding the grieving process and give them an outlet for their grief. Has anybody ever read Tear Soup? No. This is so exciting. Tear Soup is like the greatest book ever. And it's a great book for anybody that's grieving, not just for children. And it's basically like this older woman and her husband who are grieving the loss of a child. And it's about how they grieve differently. And she's making tear soup. It's the sweetest story. It will make you cry. I think there's a YouTube video on it if you want to watch it, but it's long, so I wouldn't have time to show it to you now. But anyways, it's fabulous. I love, love, love that story. Play, we're going to talk about play just in a second. Teach them about, explore their feelings, use feeling cards, books, game stories. You can tell I love books. I love the feelings flashcards. Okay, and you think that teenagers won't do these? I've got news for you. Teenagers love these silly flashcards. They love them. You'd be surprised the things that teenagers will do. They will. Okay, so we're going to talk about play, so I need you guys to stand up. Let's see. I've never done this with a crowd this big, so if I get kicked out after this, it was really nice. So when I throw you a snowball, you just find the person that you're going to throw the snowball at and jump it. Not like somebody right here that is no class, okay? You should someone a little bit away from you. Okay, so. Come on, don't be shy, yes, here. Good thing I brought my sword. Yeah, find someone to throw. Here you go. Here. Who needs the ball? Oh, yeah. That was totally going to you. I can't have no throwing power.
I just need to get
Okay, should we come back together now? Do you want to collect these? I know, right? I know. So, I think, yeah, Jade will collect these. Thank you. No, you're fine. You guys are such a cooperative group. Okay, so here's the thing. Our bodies are wired for high excitement, movement, being in close proximity with somebody. When our body is in that space, we remember things. So you're not going to remember anything I said this whole night except for that sentence right there. You're going to be like, we played a game and the body is wired for high excitement and movement, and you'll never remember anything else. But that's the part that you're going to remember. So that's how our body is wired, right? So how many of us spend enough time playing with our kids? Oh, you knew I was going to get you, huh? Because play is where the connection happens. It's where the magic happens. I don't know how, every training I ever do, I always find a way to put play in there, I'm not gonna lie, every time. Because play is one of the most healing things that we can ever do for our kids. So when you have a baby and you raise that baby from the very beginning, that's usually one of the foundations of the relationship, is that it's built on play, right? Play means what? What am I expressing to you if I play with you? Pastor Jason, I see that you're trying to keep my snowball back there. I just want to say, I see you, and I'm not the only one that sees you, but okay. Play says what? I'm invested in you, right? I'm invested in you. You're important. This relationship is important. I have a husband. We've been married for 27 years. I know, you guys know I'm super old now, yeah. You guys, we were, like 12. If that relationship wasn't fun, yeah, it's still fun sometimes. If it wasn't fun, would I have kept dating him? Would I have married him? That guy's like, well, I don't know you. Maybe you would have. No, I wouldn't have, right? Like, being in a relationship with someone is being connected, and there has to be joy in that relationship. If there's not joy in that relationship, why would I really want to be in it? Why do I really want to be there? So play is probably one of the most healing places that we can take our kids, which is why I always like to talk about it. And our children have not experienced enough play. And I think that when we bring our little kiddos into our home, we're kind of expecting this kid right here with all these lovely life experiences, right? They've got a little bit of everything. But what's actually happening is we're moving this kid into our home, right? And there's not a lot of lovely life experiences that are in here. And so what we have to do is slowly start to unpack this jar so that it starts to look a little bit more like this jar. And one of the best ways that we can do that is to be connected and play with our kids. So it's the language of children. It's honestly the language of adults. What did you guys hear when we were playing right now? What did you guys hear? Laughter. Love. Did you feel love? Aw, you're like my favorite. I like you. Okay. I do what? I have your attention. Okay. That's good. I don't have anybody else's attention. That's why you're my favorite. Okay, what did you see? What was the experience? What was happening to the people around? Huh? Some of them were unaware. They were getting hit by balls. Yeah. Yeah. Smiles. That's a big one right there. Eye contact. Because that's a hard one for some of our kids, eye contact. So we had eye contact, we had laughter, a little fear. There's always someone in every crowd that says, I was a little scared. They're snowballs. They don't hurt. They're soft snowballs. Yeah. Did anybody, I think pretty much everybody stood up and was part of it. I gave very little direction, but did everybody follow the directions? Yeah. Everybody followed directions. Everybody was together as a group, right? Like you learn social skills when you're playing. Oh, yeah. You learn emotional regulation when you're playing. You can teach that. Like I said about having a Nerf war and then maybe doing something afterwards to, oh, okay, let's regulate ourselves now. Like, woo, I feel really pumped up after that snowball fight. What can we do? So our children, they often don't know how to play. So we're mentoring their brain, we're healing, we're replacing distress with pleasure. I love that one. We're replacing frustration with laughter, isolation with connectedness. We're strengthening emotional and social development, and we're giving language expression for feelings. Did you think that you could do all that with the power of play? You did? You're so smart. He's so smart. But I think we forget. Okay, maybe you guys don't, but I know I forget. I get really caught up in, oh, well, they got to do their homework and they got to, we got to catch them up in this area and we got to do this. Those things are important, but the relationship is by far the most important thing, and that is really where the healing is going to happen, is in your relationship with them. Okay, I think that is the last slide. I did it. I was supposed to be done by 7:45. So good. Okay, that's all. That's all I got for you. Okay, she has a question. I do. No. I use the same game every time, but thanks for pointing that out to everybody. No. So that's a really good idea. So with one group, we bought little food items that you get at Target, but they're sewn together, so they're out of like material, and we had a food fight, and that was actually really kind of fun. I know. Sorry. Should have done the food fight. Next time. Next time. Do the food fight. Okay. No questions. Oh. Uh-huh. So what will they do? Uh-huh. Uh-huh. So what, does she like puzzles? Play doesn't have to be loud. I'm just like a loud person. Yeah. So, it's funny you say that, because my little one is very quiet, and she has learned to say the words, Mom, you're a little too much for me right now. I'm not going to lie. And that's cool. I was like, oh, good words. Sorry about that. So I've kind of been in that space where she doesn't necessarily like all the same things that we might normally do. But so I would say quiet things like, does she like puzzles or coloring? Puzzles are great because there's eye contact involved. Oh. And reading a book, will she let you read a book to her out loud? Okay. Yeah, I like that. Anything else that she likes to do? Again, kids are very kind of about themselves, so anything that you can do. I like to eat too. Yeah. Will she help you prepare the food? Uh-huh. Okay. Yeah, spaghetti. Yeah. Okay. Good. I would try reading to her. That would be my first thing. And then, with your silly voices, because that's the fun way to do it. Yeah. Maybe she'll engage. Maybe she'll talk about it. Maybe she'll share something. I have so much wisdom. Just kidding. Kind of hoping nobody asks me anything else. Because my boss's wife is here, and then she'll be like, Chad, she's stupid. Go ahead. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. 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 So, okay, this is about her, not about her birth mother, but her foster. Yeah. Yeah. So I feel really strongly that their story is their story and they deserve to have it. That doesn't mean that you definitely need to. It needs to be age appropriate. But what they say is that by the time a child is 12, they should know their entire story, developmentally 12. Because when you hit the teenage years, if you're now learning new stuff about your story, that is not a good time to process it. Not a good time. So they say like by the age of 12, there's a really good book called Telling the Truth to Your Foster Adopted Child, and it will give you like age, like what to say at this age, what to say at the next age, you know. It's hard, and you have to kind of know your kid, but it's worse if they don't know. Was that helpful? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I think, but I do think that the one thing that you need to really remember is that, again, kids internalize and they're very egocentric. So if you're saying things that are unkind or hurtful about that first family, they're going to internalize that. And if she was that way, then am I going to be that way? And she's a part of me, so is that who I am too? So we have to kind of balance that, if that makes sense. Yes. Yeah, it's very hard to keep our feelings out of that, huh? Because we love our kids and maybe we're angry about it. And so how do we, tell them, give them their story without giving them our anger, right? Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And they're like, this is so great. Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Till somebody asks him when he goes to kindergarten. Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. Does he have like a picture of, like a birth mom or a birth dad or any? Uh-huh. So he has a concept of who that they are. Yeah. Yeah. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. So I think if you guys are having the conversations about it, and if he, okay, so my daughter was 3.5 when she moved in with us, so she she knew she had a relationship with her birth mom. She moved out of another family, so we would talk about her. And the older that they get, the more that starts to make sense to them. Who that like she would call her tummy mommy, like that was her language. Okay, she doesn't call her that now. She's 18. Like she gets what that means. But at the time, that was sort of her language. But I like books. I also started. Has anybody done a life book? So yeah, one person. I'm notoriously really bad with anything that has to do with scrapbooking or something, time-consuming and creative like that. But like we started this big special folder that she knows where it is, and it's got pictures in it. It actually has all of her adoption information in it, and we actually are going to go through it again this weekend because I was saying about the medical stuff to try to see if we can find some more stuff in there. But and she had like a picture book in her room, so that we could sort of have conversations about it. We had books, we had books about, my daughter's also African American, so books about like her hair and those kind of conversations just kind of authentically brought in the topic of what adoption is and what it looks like. But he's going to start to make sense of those things as he gets older. Yeah. And the vocabulary will change over time to what it means to him. Like, if you say, oh yeah, you have a birth mom, that's going to make no sense to him whatsoever. But if you say, oh, you used to be in, how so-and-so was in her tummy, yeah, you used to be in April's tummy, or, whatever. The words that make sense to him now. I would. Because as I learned in 5th grade, they're thinking about them more than we think that they're thinking about them. Even when you've had those conversations, you're like, oh, well, yeah. Oh, wow. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. And is she, how old is she, 10? And she doesn't have like developmental delays in other areas? Wow, that's super interesting. Uh-huh. And and these are all you're having conversations, like there's nothing visual for her to do. So I would do like a timeline with her, like her life timeline. And I like timelines for a couple of reasons. For one thing is it helps the child start to center themselves into what's past and what's present, which is really important with our kids because a lot of times they're still kind of in the past. And a timeline helps you go like, see this, remember this is here, this happened, back here. But I would do something visual with her, like a timeline, and maybe even start creating some life book memories. When my daughter had her book in her room, she would kind of go and look at it sometimes when she was younger. She had access to it, so she would just go and look at it and look at the pictures. So, and if you don't have pictures, that's fine, but maybe if you gave her something visual, and if she helped you create it and was a part of that process, rather than just talking about it, she might internalize that a little bit more. And another thing that I want to say, did that answer your question at all? Uh-huh. 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 But maybe putting what you do know down somewhere, so it's like in a written, or even writing her a letter that talks about it, that she can keep the letter and refer back to it when she has questions or thoughts about it. So, no, I wouldn't say that I've heard that a lot, where they actually go, oh wait, maybe when they were younger, but not at the age of 10. That's not an experience that I've had. But it could be that it's just really hard for her to process, or that it's, that's why I'm thinking I would make something that is visual that she can go back